A Canadian family applied to 47 rental units in 3 months. They were rejected from every single one. Tonight, they're living in a hotel room, 2 adults, 3 kids, paying $4,000 a month for a place they can't call home. And the Prime Minister who promised to fix this, his own government's numbers just told us the crisis is getting worse, not better. Stay with me, because what's happening right now in Canada's housing market is something every renter, every homeowner, and every taxpayer needs to understand. Mark Carney made one promise clearer than any other during the 2025 election: build 450,000 homes a year. That was the number. That was the commitment. Build Canada homes. $13 billion over 5 years. A new era, a turning point. Canadians voted for it. 9 months later, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation released updated projections, and the numbers are not close. Housing starts are now projected to fall to 212,000 units by 2027. That is less than half of what Carney promised. That is also 40,000 fewer homes than Canada actually built the year before he took office. If you're wondering how a $13 billion housing program ends up building fewer homes than before it existed, keep watching, because the answer is more disturbing than you think. The Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed what builders on the ground already knew. Build Canada Homes is not generating the surge in construction the government projected. In 6 months, the program has approved just over 10,000 units. Canada needs 287,000 additional units just to meet Carney's own promise. At the current pace, closing that gap would take 20 years. 20 years. And while the bureaucracy moves slowly, real people are paying the price right now. If this story matters to you, share it with someone who needs to see it. Because these numbers will not fix themselves, and silence doesn't help the family living in that hotel room. Here is what the government hasn't said loudly enough. The money exists. Parliament approved the funding. The problem is what happens between federal approval and an actual shovel in the ground. Provinces control zoning. Municipalities issue building permits. Federal dollars have to pass through provincial housing agencies before reaching a single builder. Each layer adds months. A developer in Mississauga applied for Build Canada Homes funding in October. He received preliminary approval in January. Final funding approval came in April. Construction still hasn't started. He's still waiting on municipal permits that require provincial sign-off. Now multiply that timeline across thousands of projects across every major city in the country. The system was never built for speed. And while that system moves at its own pace, rents are not waiting. The average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in Toronto hit $2,800 in November. In Vancouver, $3,100. These are not luxury condos. These are aging walk-ups, often without in-suite laundry, in neighborhoods where families have lived for decades. Canada's rental vacancy rate dropped to 1.9% in 2025. Anything below 3% is considered a crisis by housing economists. In Toronto, the vacancy rate is 1.2%. What does 1.2% mean in human terms? It means a family applies to 47 units and gets rejected from every one. It means 2 adults and 3 children in a hotel room at $4,000 a month with nowhere left to turn. And evictions are making it worse. Landlords evict tenants, claim renovation, then re-rent the same unit at double the price. The practice is technically illegal in most provinces. Enforcement is nearly non-existent. The advocacy group Acorn Canada tracked a 38% increase in renoviction cases between 2024 and 2025. Most affected families cannot afford to stay in the same neighborhood. They just disappear from the data and reappear in shelter intake numbers. 60,000 Canadians are experiencing homelessness on any given night. That figure comes from a national count conducted in March 2025. It represents a 32% increase from 2023. Drive through Nathan Phillips Square in Toronto. Tents are packed against each other. The same scene plays out under the Gardiner Expressway along Vancouver's downtown east side, which has expanded 6 full blocks in 2 years. In Calgary, in Ottawa, in Montreal. Shelters in every major city are over capacity. Emergency services reported 17 deaths among unhoused people in Toronto alone during January's cold snap. The Salvation Army told CBC in February that demand for emergency housing rose 40% year over year. Food banks reported the same surge. People who had stable housing a year ago are now relying on services they never imagined they would need.
Now, here is where this gets complicated. And this is the part most coverage misses.
Mark Carney is not simply a politician who overpromised. He is the former governor of the Bank of Canada. He ran monetary policy for 7 years. He then led the Bank of England. There is arguably no one in Canadian federal politics who understands interest rates better than he does. And yet the single biggest reason construction is collapsing is an interest rate he cannot touch. The Bank of Canada raised its key rate to 4.75% in June 2025 and has not moved since. Developers borrow to build. A typical mid-rise apartment building in Toronto requires $50 to $80 million in financing. An extra 2 percentage points on that loan adds millions in annual interest costs. Those costs either get passed on to renters and buyers, or the project gets canceled. Projects are being canceled. The Bank of Canada is independent for good reason. It prevents political manipulation of the money supply. But it also means Carney's housing program is in a direct fight with borrowing costs he has no power to change. He knows exactly what the problem is. He just cannot solve it from the office he now holds. What Carney can do, and what he has not done fast enough, is force municipalities to move. Federal infrastructure funding tied directly to permit approval timelines. Provinces incentivized to streamline building codes. The political fights those moves require are real, and they require cooperation from governments that largely did not campaign alongside him. But the alternative is clearer every day. Canada built 262,000 homes in 2024. That was already 140,000 short of what economists said was needed to keep pace with population growth. Canada's population grew by 1.2 million people in 2025. Most of that growth came through immigration, which the same federal government manages. The government is running an immigration program and a housing program that are moving in exactly opposite directions. More people arriving, fewer homes being built. The result is not a mystery, it is arithmetic. The Carney government did introduce a GST rebate for first-time homebuyers worth up to $10,000. Housing advocates were direct about it. A tax break that helps people who can already afford a down payment does nothing for the 60,000 people sleeping outside tonight. More buyers competing for fewer homes does not lower prices, it raises them. The homeownership wealth gap is accelerating. Homeowners have seen equity gains of 40 to 60% since 2020. Renters have seen their costs double with no path to ownership in sight. This is not a cycle anymore. This is a structural divide that is being locked in permanently. So here is exactly where things stand. Carney promised 450,000 homes a year. His government's own agency now projects 212,000 by 2027. $13 billion has been committed and 10,000 units have been approved in 6 months. The rental vacancy rate in Toronto is 1.2%. Average rent for a one-bedroom in Vancouver is $3,100. 60,000 Canadians are unhoused. Shelters are over capacity, and 17 people died in Toronto's cold snap alone. Interest rates are at 4.75%. Construction financing is not viable for most projects, and developers are laying off workers and walking away. The program's money is real. The bureaucratic trap it's caught in is also real. Canada did not build enough housing for a decade before Carney arrived. Structural problems do not respond to 6-month timelines. But here is the question that matters most right now. If provinces won't cooperate, if municipalities won't approve, if the Bank of Canada won't move, and if builders keep walking away, who is actually going to build the homes? We are tracking this story every day, every number, every update, every broken promise, and every step forward. If you found this valuable, send it to one person who's struggling to find housing right now. They deserve to know what's happening and why.
And if you want the full picture as this unfolds,
not summaries, not spin, just the facts, subscribe. We're watching this so you don't have to miss a thing.